In a grasshopper, you bring your opposite leg to your opposite arm, all while keeping midline stability. You will also be making sure that your shins touch your arms. This is a bad example because Riley isn't keeping midline stability, her shins are not touching her arms, and she's not going opposite leg to opposite arm. In a perfect push-up, you have midline stability, your arms are shoulder width apart, your elbows are back, and your chest touches the floor but does not rest. In a modified push-up, you keep midline stability all the way to the floor, but you are allowed to break that stability to roll up off the ground. This is an incorrect push-up because Riley's arms are far too wide, her elbows are out, she's not keeping midline stability while lowering herself to the ground. In a perfect sit-up, you start sitting up and then slowly lower yourself down to the ground, making sure your hands touch behind your head. And when you pull yourself up with your abs, you make sure your shoulders go over your hips and your hands touch your shoelaces. This is an improper sit-up because she's starting on the ground, her hands aren't reaching behind to touch the floor behind her head, her shoulders aren't going over her hips, and her hands are not touching her shoelaces. In a perfect air squat, she has her arms locked above her head, her feet a little more than shoulder width apart, her feet are facing forward, she's squatting to below parallel, and her chest is up and forward. This is a bad example because her hands are not locked above her head, her feet are too far apart and they're not facing forward, and she's not squatting to below parallel. In a perfect lunge, her back knee touches the floor, her front knee does not go over her foot, and her back stays straight throughout the movement. This is a bad example of a lunge because her back knee is not touching the ground, her front knee is over her foot, and her back is not straight. In a perfect bicycle crunch, you crunch up with your abs, touching your opposite elbow to your opposite knee. 2 touches equals 1 rep. This is a bad example of a bicycle crunch because she's not using her abs to touch her opposite elbow to her opposite knee. She is also counting her reps wrong. Instead, she should be counting 2 touches as 1 rep.